and welcome to Change for the Better, the Power of Arts in Education. I am your host, Stacey Tirro, and today is the premiere of a new segment of this show called Ask Tirro. So if you've been watching or listening to the podcast or reading the blog, you know that the show is based on me asking my high school alumni 10 questions that lead us into this incredible journey back to their high school performing arts experiences. Through their stories, they reveal who they were, who they are, what they've learned, and how their dance and thespian experiences have impacted them as human beings. As a teacher, I get tons of questions from my students all the time. Most of the time, it's related to school stuff, but sometimes they are about my personal experience, my history, who I am, like where I came from. And that's when some interesting conversations get going. So I thought it might be compelling and maybe challenging to turn the tables a little bit and have my Change for the Better guests ask me a burning question that they've had about me, my teaching experience, or any part of my own journey through the years that led me to teaching at Spring Valley. I don't know what they're going to ask. I've told them I don't want to know, but I'm kind of excited and a little nervous to be in the hot seat. So my first Ask Tirro guest is from episode 36, Nathalie Alcime. Natalie's was a particularly special episode. Of course, they're all super special, but she's here, so hers was really special. But not only because it was a two-parter, and I think it's like the only two-parter that we have in the series so far, but also because it showed her special recital vocal performance of the song Now that I co-wrote during the pandemic with my episode 6 guest, Hearns Laguerre Jr. So we are going to get this rolling. And Nathalie, do you have any burning questions for
I
me?
sure do. I sure do. And I
Uh,
made sure that I try not to go overboard, but try to find a good balance. But then also was like, okay, let me kind of also be open minded and listen to what you're saying, because maybe there are some questions that I might even ask in between as you're speaking. So I had a little bit of everything, but I'm so excited to do this episode with you. And I will first start out by maybe asking you to maybe explain your musical journey to us. I think that's a fair question to start out for people who haven't known like your background. What did that look like before you were a teacher?
that's a very good question. So I'm going to try and encapsulate it as best I can. So I got my musical stuff from my father. My father was a drummer and a magnificent piano player who played these. He could hear something and just play it on the piano all of a sudden. And he didn't read music. Like he started playing piano when he was like 4 or 5 years old. His mother was a music teacher. And so he took lessons, for a while. And then he was like, music, I don't need that. And then he just started playing. So it was all rooted in basically my father. And so we would he would play piano. We had this beautiful baby grand, which I actually have now in my house. Yeah. So he would play every night and I would sit over his shoulder. We had fake books, we would sing, classics and rock and roll and like all of this and musical theater, lots of musical theater. Fast forward to it was like middle school and I got involved in the middle school play. I played Miss McAfee in Bye Bye Birdie. Summer after that, I did a Clarkstown Summer Theater Festival. That was like my first kind of big experience with musical theater in the school level. And then from that point forward, I was like hooked. So then I started taking voice lessons and I was in the band. I took flute lessons. And so music was a really important part of my growing up and my sort of development and love for musical theater. My dad actually wanted me to be an opera singer. He wanted to send me to school to be an opera singer.
I can totally see that, by the way.
I at one time I was a legit soprano many, many moons ago. Now I'm kind of a mezzo at best. I can trace it all back to sitting at the piano with my dad, and then the rest is kind of history.
That was all beautiful, by the way. And I loved how you said we just, took some fake books and
Yeah. But that was so amazing because he didn't he only like read the chords, at the top of the each stanza. So I was like, all right. So I kind of learned a little bit how to fake it, how to fake play,
yeah.
but I couldn't hold a candle to him. And I can read music. I just read it really slowly. Like it's going to take me 4 years to like read a page of music.
Yeah, I totally understand. Yeah, but there it sounds like there was a lot of like improv too. Like it was just even though he played chords, he couldn't
Oh,
necessarily really read, but he just like played away, which honestly, in my opinion, that's still musicianship at best too. You know
oh,
what I mean? So like as long as you figure out what your musical process looks like and you kind of keep to it and you grow on those skills, yeah, you can go so far with it. So
he
that's
played
beautiful.
through his whole life. Like that's just how he played. Everybody knew it. People on the block, every night he would play and they were like, "Oh, there's still he's playing again."
Yeah,
It was just a thing that we did.
that's awesome. So you said you went to school for music, or what did that look like? And
So
you started
I
out as music, or
no, I went to Montclair State. It was Montclair State
ooh.
College at the time. Now it's university. Of course, I leave and then they become a university. Go figure. At the time, they didn't have musical theater. They did musicals, twice a year, but I was a BFA, Bachelor of Fine Arts, an acting major. And so, I learned like Stanislavski technique, and I eventually I took a directing class, which like changed the course of my, entire experience. I did study music. I took voice lessons, but I also had the dance lessons. And so I tried to craft as much of the musical theater piece as I could while still being an acting major. And to me, like my deficits, I suppose, were in that acting realm. I needed more like attention in that realm. I felt like, coming into college, I had a lot of music experience and I was like, okay, I'm pretty good here. I could still use work, but this is where I need to bump it up. So I kind of wanted to be that triple threat, the singer, actor, dancer thing. And then I graduated from college and for 3 years, I was an actress. I, auditioned for stuff and did some regional stuff. And I got to go over to Monte Carlo and sing in the Monte Carlo Sporting Club. We did an industrial there. 3 years later, I kind of got the opportunity to start doing school theater. And then a couple of years after that, I got the Spring Valley gig, the thespian gig. And I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And rest is history.
At what point did it kind of click that you wanted to go the teacher route? Like, were you wanting to perform for a long period of time, or was it like you just wanted to learn these skills to then teach it?
No, I had no intention to be a teacher.
Yeah.
Zero, zero. I was like, I'm going to be on Broadway. I'm going to be a gypsy, blah, blah, blah. So like what happened was I had been dating my now husband, my boyfriend at the time. Before we got married, we were like together for 8 years. So we knew going through the college process and he went through law school, like we knew that we were going to settle down and get married. And he wanted to be a lawyer and I was going to be an actress. And that was just what we were going to do. And as we kind of moved forward in life, I started to see what the actual life of a theater person was and how like brutal it was. It wasn't until I got the opportunity to do because I was helping a friend of mine. I musical directed a production of Godspell, and then I choreographed a show for her. And this was like in a middle school setting. And then like the pianist from that gig knew was going to musical direct the musical for Spring Valley, and they needed a director and a choreographer. So Iris Filecoff called me because my father knew the principal, and he made me give my resume to that principal, Sid Farber, may he rest in peace. And so when they needed a director and a choreographer, Sid was so told Iris, call her. And so I got into Spring Valley. And then, like, the year after I started, Sid approached me and said, hey, do you want to start a dance program here and teach in the school? And I went, okay. I didn't have like a gig. I didn't have something to do. And I was like, all right, let's see where this goes. And so I was getting ready to get married, and I was like, "You know what? This whole gypsy life thing, that's really not for me." I realized I was a homebody. I wanted to raise to be a family. I wanted to have a career, and I wanted to be in the arts, but
Mhm.
I realized that being a professional actor, actress, it wasn't the life that I thought it was gonna be. I'm not
Yeah.
sure, how to say that. It was basically responding to an opportunity.
Mhm.
And I just kind of reevaluated what my priorities were and what I really wanted, and I was like, "This means I have a full-time job with benefits. It's 15 minutes from my house. I could do this, and I'm good at it, like, I'm pretty good at it." And then I just kind of stayed and developed and kept the challenge was just so immense, but I just loved it, and I loved interacting with the students, just being in their space and learning from them, and just year after year after year, I was like, "Okay, this is home for me."
Yeah, and I liked how you mentioned before that you just kind of had to take a pause and reassess and evaluate what your priorities are because sometimes you might start one way and might end up another way, and it just takes to stop and assess and look at what your priorities are. Sometimes we feel like we started one way and we have to commit to it because that's what it is, but really, as we move on in life, there are things that will come in that might challenge our perspective, our thoughts on things. And it's okay. It's okay to do that because, we're growing. We're a work in progress. Our desires or ambitions can change over time because we're becoming new people each season we enter in. So I liked that you kind of mentioned about that. So I like that you mentioned the dance part because I wanted to ask you. I know we talked a little bit about the singing, we talked a little bit about the acting, but where did dance come into all of this? Like, did you started taking dance lessons when you were younger or during college? Great. So tell us about
Still
because,
the case.
and I say that because a lot of times people think that you have to start like wee small, like
Mhm.
whether it's playing an instrument or like singing or acting, that if you don't start small, then you're never going to be an excellent, musician or singer or whatever it is.
Right.
But that's not always the case.
No, it's certainly not the case with me, and so I was what you would call a late bloomer. When I was young, I, would go to Hebrew school. I think when I was 6, I took, like, baby ballet, like, like 1 year or something, but then after that, my mother would never let me take gymnastics. We were kind of raised in a conservative Jewish home, and so, like, I was gonna go to Hebrew school, I got bar mitzvahed, like, all of that stuff was kind of in the forefront, and my mother, worked full-time too. My father, mother both worked full-time. So it was, like, about juggling, what can get done. Once I had those couple of early, like, middle school going into high school musical theater experiences, and my parents were like, "Oh, you could do dance. All right, let's get her into dance." I took ballet, and then it turned into ballet, tap, and jazz. And so over the course of high school, dance became a much more, important part of my non-academic education, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Sure.
Then I got pretty good at it. And so moving into college, my degree, my major was not dance, but I had developed a lot of schools that I could get into some of the dance offerings that were offered by the college because they had a whole dance major. And then I was, we did a chorus line. And so every experience that I got, I felt like I was on this really like steep learning curve and I just had to absorb like everything and watch everything because it was just like flexibility didn't come naturally to me. Turning didn't come naturally to me. And none of it felt natural. Where like some girls, like their legs go up to here and
Right.
do 40 million turns. And I'm like, that's
That's
not
right.
me. How do I get there? It was a constant uphill sort of struggle. And I felt like there was kind of a limit to where I could actually get, but I was okay because, I was primarily a singer who could dance and who could act. So, like, it's like balancing what your talents were. After college, I would go to Broadway Dance Center. I got like a scholarship working at the desk and taking classes. think Frank Hatchett and a couple other people there. I really like got better as I went, always knowing that dance was not my superpower, so to speak. I wouldn't get into like the upper echelon, dance auditions, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But like I could hold my own in a lot of ways. So when I translated that into like the Spring Valley and choreographing, I was like, well, they all don't know nearly as much as I do, so I have something to teach them.
That's good.
They don't need to do triple turns and they don't need to, have splits out to here. And so when I did get really highly skilled dancers, come into my program, that was a real challenge to me because I
Mhm,
was like, they want to take dance, like they don't want to take gym. Okay. How do I keep them interested?
mhm,
And so part of the process was teaching the vast range of talent and ability from nothing at all to highly skilled all in one class.
mhm.
Because we had like two different classes or three different classes, but they weren't level based. They were just, focus based.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought that up too, because I think this would be the next question would be like a fair question to ask for someone who may be interested in the arts, and maybe for them they might have a similar experience to you, where like dance might not be their strength, or acting might not be their strength, but singing is, or vice versa. But maybe talk about what would the process look like in teaching a class where one of those subcategories might not be your strength, and how to be able to go about it. And I say this too because like even for me there were some times where there were some like opportunities that would come up, and I wouldn't say I am a professional dancer, but I've learned dance, like I've self-taught, learned from like friends, and then here and there, and I got rhythm, so that helps. But when it comes to like certain techniques, I don't necessarily know how to like articulate them well, but because I observe well,
Mhm,
I can, show them. So maybe talk about like what is the process, or maybe some tips that someone who might be placed in a similar situation where they have an opportunity,
mhm.
but instead of discounting themselves, how can they use this opportunity to their advantage?
I understand what you're saying. I think mimicry is a huge component. I would be in class and not feel like I knew the things that I really needed to know. I would look around and go, what are they doing? What are the ones who really know what they're doing? What are they doing? How do I embody that? And sometimes you can do it by watching, and sometimes you need to connect with the teacher. You need to, talk to people, but it's really trying to put yourself in the physical and the mental and the emotional space of what does a good version of this look like, and how do I make that happen in my body? Everybody's bodies are different, everybody's brains are different. Not everybody's going to be great at everything, but I think that if we have the like open-mindedness to be okay with making the mistakes and to look kind of not right and to maybe look foolish sometimes and to fall and to fail, we learn from that. And that I think has been a burning principle for me because I had to do so much of that, of,
Mhm.
not looking good, my leg not being straight enough or high enough or feeling out of balance. It's messy. Like learning movement is messy and being an artist is messy. So I think just being humble, eating some humble pie, and being really, really open to being taught, whether the universe is teaching you or a teacher or your peers are teaching you. You can learn from everywhere. I think that's why I've been okay for so long and I continue to build skills all the time.
Even for like someone who's like a high school, hopefully high schoolers are listening to this as well. There are, some things that they might have interest in, but a lot of times because of that fear, because of that insecurity of like, well, I've never done this before, or, I'm not good at that, or my size, because that's another thing with the arts too, depending on where, but like dance is like one where it's like you have to look a particular way. These different factors that come to play. And so, how do we get these students to not count themselves out,
Mhm.
but to say, like, no, you can do this too. Your process or your journey might look different, but it doesn't mean that you're not capable of it. All you need is just a will, a drive, and like you mentioned too, being open and being humble, and then just working at it.
You need grit.
That's right, grit.
A lot of grit. You need,
Right.
like, a lotta, "Oh god, like, I don't know that I wanna go into this, but I'm gonna do it anyway because I really wanna do it."
That's right. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, and that's, like, so needed, especially as, like, an artist, because you are constantly dealing with different kinds of pressures, whether it's, like, auditioning and always being rejected or certain parts that you would like to have, but then you end up not getting the part that you'd
Sure.
like. It's always good to have that grit mentality of, like, "How can I push through this?"
I think I felt more at home and at peace in the classroom because the classroom is where I developed the love for it. And in my classrooms, I get to choose what the artistic experience is gonna be like.
Mhm.
Like, I get to sort of drive that car, and I can do it from the memory of where I was as a teenager and growing up,
Mhm.
and I can respond to the students who are in front of me, and it's different all the time, but I have built a curriculum and a program that takes them not just into consideration, but, like, puts them into the forefront of, like, what are the things that they need to learn? What are the skills they need? It's all skill-based,
Right.
and, if you don't get it, you don't get it, but tomorrow you can come back and keep trying.
There was something that you said that actually kind of like segue to my next question. And this could go in any direction. So I would say maybe I'll ask the question and whatever comes to mind, you
Okay.
can say.
Okay.
But the question is because you talked a little bit about creative process earlier. So, what is your creative process? What does that look like?
That could probably be, like, an hour, but, um, I'm trying to distill it for, like, all of the different, things,
Yeah.
so, I have a project, with a show or I have to choreograph something or, whatever. And I think I just look at what's the story that we're telling, what's the thing that we're trying to achieve. I used to like write everything out, like every piece of choreography, every thought that I had, it would go into a script or a notebook or, stick figures and I want them to look like this. As I have gotten older and probably a little less patient for that, and I can't remember, like, what I was thinking, even if I wrote it down, I was like, I don't know what I meant by this." I think now my process is a little bit more, I mean, sometimes improvisational, but, like, I have the general gist of what I wanna do, and
Mhm.
it gets sort of created in front of me because, how many basic steps, they're all there. So
Mhm.
I'll listen to the music and I say, okay, I want this to go here. I want this to go there. Oh, can you try this? Hey, can you make this thing up for me? Because I feel like you have a good idea that so there's a real collaborative nature to it. I mean, again, I'm driving the car and I have the full veto power. So if it's not working, or if I just need to move something along and be like, "Okay, here we go. This is what you're doing." Boom. But I am trying to be a little less of a control freak in my older age. And I'm trying to give students a little bit more their own creative process. Some of the work that we do in class, will be creative choreography in nature. I'll give them a structure and okay, now what are you going to do with this? And a lot of them don't know what to do because they're given permission to, be a creator.
Right.
And some of them are like, "Woo," they're sometimes it's like just throw it out there and see what sticks.
Right.
A lot of coming up with things on the spot based on a general plan.
Mhm.
I think that would be my process.
I liked that you mentioned about the collaborative piece because that was another question that I had. But in general, music, any, dance, all of these things are like collaborative. Like there is no way to be able to create music on your own because there's always a component that someone is stepping in to help you to bring it alive. And that's the thing that I love about music, whether it's dancing, whether it's acting, whatever it is,
Mhm.
because you have the opportunity to be able to feed off of each other and to improv or create something that wasn't there, create it into something to bring life to it so that when you're performing, the way that we as artists brought it to life, people can experience that as they watch. And so maybe talk a little bit more about how does that collaborative aspect look with the students. I know you mentioned it a little bit, but maybe there's like some more about that that you can mention that can also help other people to know, like not only the importance of collaboration, but also in what ways can they contribute to that. Is it only just dancing, and what are some other ways that people can be collaborative in an artistic space?
I think when it comes to like learning music, specifically music, that's a little bit more rote as far as I'm concerned. Like you need to
Oh,
know this, you need these dynamics, blah, blah, blah. This is what the music states. I feel like when it comes to dance, there's a little bit more because with choreography, you're creating something that doesn't exist. I can ask students, we'll get to a certain point. I go, okay, what do you think? Do we think, movement A or movement idea B? What do you think would work better here? And sometimes, I'm thinking they're going to choose A and they choose B emphatically. I'm like, okay, let's go in that direction. Let's see where it goes. Now, I'm never completely married to any given idea. Um,
mm,
it's all creative. We're making it from basically nothing. With music, like it's written on the paper and it needs to be done in a certain way because the composer intended it to be a certain way. With a choreographed dance, it's especially, when I'm choreographing it, I'm really, open to seeing how it shapes itself. And if I have something really specific that I want to see, I'm just going to do that. But I'll always get input from students. I'll always have them look at each other to say, okay, what do you see? What do you think? What could improve? What could make this even better? And so they have discussions, especially in class,
mhm,
with like learning how to perform because like they have to learn how to perform. And
right.
what better way to do that than to like perform for your own classmates, the stuff that you're working on? Bringing them into the conversation, bringing them into some of the decision making, not all of the decision making, but a controlled amount. Like I said, I'm a little bit of a control freak, so I have to like kind of move back from that nature. But I
Mhm,
think that's because I know I have just a certain amount of time. We have just a certain amount of ability and a certain amount of attention span,
mhm.
and things still need to get done.
Right.
It's kind of balancing the desire to give them an autonomous experience with and we still need to get things done.
Mhm.
This all can happen and let's kind of funnel it into this is our end result and we made it together.
Yeah, it's a lot of time management and seeing when to do what, and but also choosing the right pieces that make sense to
Mhm.
the puzzle. And I think that was an important thing that you mentioned in that creative process too.
Yeah.
So that's super helpful and an important thing to keep in mind, that yes, there is the fun and there is the improvising and dancing and being free, but
Mhm.
there's also a discipline aspect that comes to it when it comes to
There's structure. We
that's
do
right.
structure.
That's right.
We're
I
not just like, "Ah,"
Chaos, yeah. I always like my motto, and this is just how my brain works, and I feel like it's a great way, but also it doesn't work for everyone. But I always feel like it's always good to have something organized, whatever it is. Then once you've written it out or do whatever you want, then you can have the freedom to change it if need be. Because the
100%.
piece is already there.
Yeah. It's like organized chaos.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's organized chaos. And that's why I think I got out of the plan every little moment ahead of time, because then that does not really give space for creative things to come up as you go.
Right.
And then as I started to trust that like it was okay to either change your mind or come up with something on the spot, then I was like, "Oh, I like this much better." You know?
Yeah.
And I was like, "That's what we're gonna do."
Yeah.
So now if it was like 80-20, plan everything out, now
Mhm.
it's like 30-70.
Yeah, yeah,
There are times when I feel like, "Man, you're just being lazy." Like,
yeah.
I don't actually think that. I think that I got good at it,
Yeah.
so go with a new strength.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit. But before I do switch gears just a little bit, I saw that you had posted about you receiving an award. So can you tell us a little bit about it? Yes, ma'am. That's right. Arts Educator Award.
Yay. Yeah, ACOR, which is Arts Council of Rockland. They do arts awards every year. They have like 7 different categories. One is arts educator, musician, dancer, visual artist. There are like seven categories. This was actually my 4th time being nominated. Not win. My 4th time being
But
nominated.
that's still an honor, and that's beautiful.
Of course. And so, I would always go to the star and was like, "Oh, somebody else won." I keep saying I was like the Susan Lucci of the arts. So we went this year. It was lovely. It was at the RCC's Ellipse Room, and it was actually the first award that was like announced that night. And they called my name, and I was like, "Oh my god, I won an award for like the work that I do. That's really cool." Yeah. They told us to create like an acceptance speech, just in case.
Yeah,
This year they did like 3 finalists for like each category, so it wasn't a million people, I guess.
yeah.
So that morning, like before I went to work, I was like, all right, let me just type something up. But it was like the things that I wanted to say about my career and what it meant to me and like all of that. And I was like, even if I don't get to say it, this is how I feel. So,
Yeah.
and I got to say it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Thank you. And
Yeah,
it's pretty. It's so pretty.
so pretty. And it's like glowing right over here on your bookshelf, which is wonderful. But I did want to make sure that I acknowledge that and that I say congratulations. And that's such a big honor. And this is a wonderful physical representation of all the work that you've done throughout the years. And yes, you don't need an award to say how awesome you are, but it's still wonderful to be able to experience that moment and to be able to just be recognized for all your good work. So
Thank you.
bravo. Congratulations.
I felt very fluttery in that moment. I was like,
Good. When I saw you post it, I was like screaming. I was like, first of all, I didn't even know if Rockland County even did stuff like that. So that was like the first thing of like, wow, I didn't even know that. And then second thing was like, oh my gosh, that is my teacher. And I was like, yes, Tirro. I was just so happy for you. So I just wanted to just congratulate you on that.
I appreciate it very much.
Oh my gosh. So you went from being such a wonderful artist, triple threat, to then getting a surprise teacher gig,
Hmm.
to then becoming a teacher, choreographer, director. And now you're like in this new phase of being an author of 2 books. So, can you talk about that? Maybe give us a brief background about 2 of the books,
Hmm.
mention the names, and then
Hmm.
2 of the books.
Sure. So my first one, that's How Do We Feel Right Now, right? Which you had a little hand in there.
Yes.
That was in response to we were in the pandemic, and then George Floyd got murdered on May 25th of that year, and basically like social media blew up, like absolutely blew up. And I had a lot of my students, former students, current students, friends who were just like like expressing all of these things of trauma and hope and justice and like all of these things. We're sitting there in the pandemic, not able to go anywhere, and there's protests everywhere. And I'm like, I don't want to go to protest in a pandemic. Like, ah. So I started collecting with permission, collecting all of these responses. And then I started like reaching out to people saying, listen, I want to put this play together. And it was sort of like the idea came from another friend who had reached out to me. And then I had all of these like stories and narratives that were just kind of collected, and I put it together. We did a reading with some of my students and a couple other people, and it turned into a play that we did with thespians that fall, and we did it virtually. And then I decided to publish it because I wanted it to be out there. Unfortunately, it's kind of timeless in that we are constantly seeing these things played out, year after year. And I wanted there to be a piece of literature out there that was an accurate reflection of what people were actually feeling in
Mhm.
the full gamut, the full scope. From that, the song "Now" that wound up singing was created. I created that with Hearns Laguerre Jr. He created the poetry, and I was like, "This is a song." And I sat at the baby grand piano. I was like, "What does this need to sound like? I don't know." And I'm not a composer per se, but it just worked. It all clicked. And then, Natalie also had her piece that she sent to me. That's in there. So if anybody wants to read a little bit with Natalie in there, go pick that up. It's on Amazon. And then this, what Ronnie Sue knew, that's a tribute to my mom. So that pandemic year, my mother had been ill for like 4 years with cancer, and she lived down in Houston, Texas. For the better part of 4 years, I was like going back and forth from New York to Houston, responding whenever she kind of had a downhill slide. So, of course, the pandemic, and she's like getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And finally, I was told, like, you need to come down. So I went down. So I was there with her like the last week of her life. As I got there, I sat next to her. I started interviewing her. I said, I want to just write things down. And, because she knew she was declining. And I was like, Mom, maybe I'm going to write a memoir about you. So like, you just keep talking. I'm going to keep typing, and someday I'm going to write a memoir about you. So that well, I say the whole week, but like, it was like about 3 or 4 days that she was, had any kind of, consciousness in and out. And then she eventually slipped into the coma. And then a couple days later, she passed. But it was this like incredible gift to like sit next to her and have her speak all of these things about her history and about her thoughts about things and about our connection. And so I spent the next year forming it into the book. So it's really just a tribute to her and what I learned from her, how I learned to be a human, a woman, a mother, a partner through her.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And what I really appreciate about this story, not only just your connection because it's your mother and it sounds that you guys had like a very strong relationship, but just the willingness to be able to carry on that legacy and the words of wisdom that she shared, but also her life story as well, because it carries on. And I think that's the beautiful thing about writing is that you are putting these words into life and you are painting a picture on a page. It's refreshing. That's not the word that I want, but I'm going to say refreshing. It's
Mhm.
very refreshing, and it feeds to the soul life and vision and hope, just because we need a lot of that in our world today, and we don't hear as much, whether it's from the first book or even the story about your mother. Like it all talks about the story and the idea of hope and what that looks like in different seasons of our lives. And do we give in to the pressures? Do we give in to the hardships that we face, or do we just look at it and say, okay, how can I bring life to this? How can I bring restoration and hope and purpose
Yeah.
in all of this?
And my mom she was a really joyful person. I mean, people look at me and like, "Oh, you're, so happy or so this," and that came from her. There's a lot of me that is reflected through her.
Mhm.
And I just kind of wanted to make sure that the way I saw her, the way that I hold her in my heart was commemorated, was, actually codified in one space, because our memories are not great. My memory's not great. I really want to hold on to everything that I experience, and that's just, not possible. So I kind of wanted to make sure that, because I knew that she was going to be gone, that I could kind of, like a snapshot, but sort of a living snapshot, that I was able to put out on a page. And at the cover art is actually drawn by Serena Hubert, who was a class of 2016, I think. She actually, there was more to it, but this was originally going to be like the back cover, and
Mhm.
it turned out to be perfect for the front cover.
Yeah,
So,
that's
and that's
beautiful.
my author bio
Yeah.
thingy. Yeah, self-published it through Amazon. Another learning process, but definitely worth it.
And I like that you said it was another learning process because I think that is like a recurring theme. And here's something else that you probably didn't see yourself doing, but you just learned it. That helps us to remember just being flexible, but also knowing to choose into the process, whatever it is that we want to do. Like it's not impossible.
The word that I've always came back to, it's funny, but I've been opportunistic, I don't mind saying yes to an opportunity that scares the bejesus out of me.
Mhm.
Because if you don't say yes to something that you're interested in, then you'll never know if you could be good at it. You'll
Mm.
never know. I mean, you might not be good at it, but you have a brain and you can learn.
Mhm.
So you can get better at things. And I have a lot of other things that, between the blog and, everything that I'm doing, this is all just me like exploring and getting an idea and just getting it out there.
Mhm.
And if it turns into something in the future as I'm, moving towards retirement, great. And if not, well, I have this like sort of body of work, and then I can go figure something else out to do, and it's okay.
Yeah, going back to what you said of how did you put it? Just not being afraid to try and because you don't know. I feel like there's this quote too, like you don't know what you're capable of until you actually do it.
True.
And that is like such a key nugget of truth because a lot of times we shortchange ourselves by telling ourselves we can't do it. And then we ended up not doing it. And we don't even know what our strengths could have
Right.
been
If I
had.
didn't take those dance classes,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today.
Oh, I know the word that I want. Taking a risk. Taking a taking a risk on yourself. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big, huge, huge risk taker. Well, safe risk. Like, I'm not going to like jump from a
Potential
building. Remain
calculated risks.
calculated risks. I will remain healthy and intact, even if things don't go well.
That's right. Yes. But you know what, though? It does make us stronger and it also gives us permission to fail. And that failing is okay because you come out smarter afterwards. And I think sometimes we're too scared to take a risk because we just don't want to go through the pain or maybe the embarrassment or whatever it is. But I think we just need to have like an I don't care attitude of like, okay, so what? That's okay. I'll try
Right.
something else.
It's
You
all it's
know?
all cool. It's all
Yeah,
good. This is
yeah.
me learning on this path that I'm taking. And if I have to make a left turn, I'll make a left turn and I'll learn on that path. But I'm alive and I'm creative and I'm resilient and I am interested, and let's go.
That's right. Okay. I feel like I have like a bajillion of questions, but I also want to save it for other people. So I'm trying not to be selfish right now. I really am trying not to, but every time I like look at my questions, then I'm like, oh my gosh, she just said something so interesting, and I need to ask her about this, that, and the third. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask one last serious question,
Mhm.
and then I'm gonna do like two bonus, like fun questions that we can ask just to kind of like end the episode. With all that you've experienced and your journey from when you were little small to now, what would be a great advice that you can share to anyone who's listening. And it could be arts related or it could not be. Whatever you feel in this moment, that would be a good advice or a good encouragement
Right.
to share with someone who's watching or listening.
Right. Stop doubting yourself.
Mm.
Like, cut that out. The voice in your head that's saying you can't, that's a lie. It's always been a lie. You can. You might have to figure it out. You might have to learn. You might fall on your face a couple times, but there's no reason not to pursue something because you don't think you can. You can. Go, do it. Don't doubt yourself.
That's so good. You don't know that I'm going to mention this next thing because you just said this right now, but since we're on this topic, can you briefly mention the title of that? Do you remember that thing that you sent me? There was a recording that you sent me, and it was related to. Look at that! I put you on the spot, and I'm here trying to remember what the name of
Mhm.
the recording, because it was along the lines of self doubt and.
Imposter syndrome?
Yes! Can you share, and maybe even later on when you do your
Mhm,
stuff,
mhm.
to share it underneath that? Because I think that's like super helpful. And at least for me, it was.
You're talking about the other podcast, the Moment of Mindful Meditation.
Yeah, was that the track that you sent? Not
Yeah.
track, but the link that you sent me was,
Yeah.
oh, on Spotify.
So before I did any of this during the pandemic, like the summer after the 2020 summer, after I'd like gotten through that 3 months of virtual hell,
Yeah.
we kind of ended the year with mindfulness stuff, like because I was like, all right, we just need to do something for these kids. Inspired by that, I started a podcast called A Moment of Mindful Meditation. And yes, it's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that. The premise is there are meditations on like different topics in 15 minutes or less. So
Mhm.
then not like super long, but they're meaningful. And it's me talking about stuff and we do a meditation and breathing and all that stuff. So one of them is called imposter syndrome because on this podcast, we talk a lot about imposter syndrome. And
Mhm.
so I think when we did our episode, we were talking about it a lot. And I
Mhm.
was like, hey, why don't you take a listen to this and see what you think?
Yes,
Yeah.
which it was wonderful. I felt like, man, I like probably cried for like a good 5 minutes. But I think I'll just say that it goes back to what you said before about the self-doubting. Again, a lot of times we don't even give ourselves a chance to do anything because we've already talked ourselves out of it. And
100%.
so it's like, how do we come to a place where we can see value and worth in who we are and our abilities and what we're able to do? And even in the things that we can't do, it doesn't discount who we are or what we can offer.
Totally. And I'm 51, so I've had a lot more years to learn that
Yeah.
and care less about what others think. So, as an adolescent, that's a hard space to live in. They doubt themselves. I'm like, quit doubting yourself. Just do it. Stop.
Yeah.
Just do it. So if I can insert that however I can, I do.
Yay! Okay, two fun questions to
Okay.
close out.
Okay.
First one, what is your favorite song to perform? Or
Oh.
what has been? What?
All right. I mean, there's a lot of songs,
Yeah.
but the one that I always came back to, especially when I was younger and kind of throughout my life, was actually Summertime from Porgy and Bess. I always loved singing that song. Of course, now I have to like warm up to get up there, but I always loved that one. And then during the pandemic, I played with GarageBand a lot and like
Yeah.
harmonizing with myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I did a version of Seven Bridges Road in like the
Oh,
5-part harmony from the Eagles. Yeah.
okay. Seven Bridges Road.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll send that to you.
Okay. Okay. Great. And this last one is like super fun. I love it. If you could go open a show for any artist, who would it be?
Oh, oh my God.
Spin.
Okay. So there's a reason that I'm saying this person.
Okay.
I have actually often in certain instances been mistaken for her. Sarah McLachlan,
Oh. Oh.
right? Yeah, I was actually in an aerial yoga class a couple summers ago,
Yeah.
and there was this woman who like kept looking at me, looking at me, looking at me, and I was like, "Hi." And I think eventually either she asked me or the teacher, like, she would talk to the teacher or something, and she thought that I was Sarah McLachlan.
It's so funny.
I was like, "No, I'm not Sarah McLachlan." It must be the hair, the face, I don't know, something about it, but yeah.
Yeah.
But I think we also have, like, sort of similar vocal qualities,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
so I think that would, like, make sense.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Even if y'all do like a duet, you know.
Oh my god, that would be amazing.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is so exciting. Thank you for letting me do this with you.
Oh my god, this is so cool. You challenged me, you really challenged me.
Great. Well, I'm
So
so happy that we had this chance to do this. And I'm so happy that people can have this opportunity to hear your story and be inspired by all of you,
and
all
I'm
the
so
things.
glad that because it's funny because this whole segment was supposed to be like, ask 1 or 2 questions, and you just, like, went balls to the wall, and I was like, "All right, we're going with this, we're doing this." But it's actually a good introduction into it, so now people are gonna have to watch this
And get more ideas.
and then come up with different ideas.
That's right. Ah, man. Well, I feel like the ideas are endless. So thank you so much again. And for those who are listening and viewing, thank you so much for listening and watching. And please go ahead and support in whatever way you can. We really appreciate it. So,
Thank you, Natalie.
oh my gosh. Oh, man. Well, tell your family thank you for letting me hold you hostage. Yeah, I was like so selfish though. I was like, oh my gosh, we get to ask questions. Let me just go ahead and do this because I'm sure there's something in there that would help and inspire me. And it so did. Like, I feel so energized.
Good.
Yeah,
Listen, anytime you just need a little bolster, you call me.
it's true.
You call me.
Yes. All right. I love you so much.
I
Bye.
love you too. See ya. Bye.
Hey. I can't hear you.
Can you know?
I think, let's
Hold on.
see. I was trying to figure out if it was me or you.
My thing is plugged in.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I can't hear you. Oh my gosh.
Do you have
Okay, let's try this one more time.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, now I hear you. That was wow.
We made it.
Oh my gosh, I feel like you get younger and younger each time. You
Well,
like
hey,
don't age.
today was my first day of summer vacation. So the skin is so happy.
It's been well oiled and well.
I wish I could say I got more sleep, but like, my alarm usually goes off at like 5:30. And so I woke up at 5:30. I was like, I'm supposed to be awake right now. But then I went
Yeah.
for a 3-mile walk. So I was like, all right, whatever, get something done.
Might as well. Well, at least you got to maximize your day, your own version of maximizing your day.
That's right. That's right. It's on my terms right now.
That's right.